Hey there, Scott here from SocialNRG Presents, and thanks once again for joining us. Our guest today is Joe Robinson, an Australian musician and vocalist who, despite being self-taught, possesses an incredible virtuoso guitar ability that outpaces some of the world's best guitar players. Joe started playing guitar in 2001 at the age of 10. By age of 11, he started touring his native Australia, and by age 13 had won the Australian National Songwriting Competition. He recorded his debut album at 15, and by age 17 had won Australia's Got Talent. By 2013, Joe was playing Madison Square Gardens in New York City at the Eric Clapton Crossroads Guitar Festival, and later went on as the opening act for Kenny Rogers. A year later, Joe was awarded the Senior Grand National Performer of the World at the World Championships of Performing Arts in Los Angeles. And today, Joe joins us from his home in Nashville for an intimate look at his career and to bring us up to speed on what he's working on next. So sit back, relax, and get ready as SocialNRG now presents you with your Backstage Pass.
Today I was actually nervous that you were on the show because I've been watching you now for months. There's not a day that goes by that I don't see you coming up on my Facebook or something, and I'm just blown away by what you put forth. It's incredible. Yesterday, the video came up for Isn't She Lovely?
Mm-hmm.
So you put up Isn't She Lovely? Now, the wonderful thing about that is you open it up on your acoustic, beautiful acoustic playing, and then you switch to I guess it's a George Benson model Ibanez.
Yep.
And you play like beautiful, like Joe Pass kind of stylings. And then from there you go to, what is it, a Tennessean, the Gretsch?
It's a country club. Yeah.
And so when you switch to that guitar, you're using your Bigsby and you start doing it more like in a country style. Then you switch over and with your Music Man and with the solid body guitar and you start playing it bluesy. And it seems like every genre you nail. And I've never seen anything like this. I'm like a gushing fan. I can't get over what you've been able to accomplish in such a relatively short amount of time.
Mick's having a bromance right now.
Absolutely.
Just
It really means a lot, Mick. And this, past year has been really incredible for me, just having more time to post more videos and work up new arrangements of songs. And, it's a fun challenge taking a classic song like Isn't She Lovely, which has a great chord progression, a great melody. And, a lot of people have done really beautiful versions of it. And, when I sit down to record a video like for YouTube and Facebook like that, oftentimes I have a bit of an idea of what I'm going to do, but I just kind of go where the arrangement takes me. And that was a fun one because I thought, I could play a little bit on the George Benson guitar, and then I can switch it up and play a chorus on each guitar. And it's fun just trying to bring out the best elements of each instrument. And that's the thing about when you put an instrument in your hands, it inspires you to make different sounds. And definitely the Gretsch sound takes me back to Chet. And when I play an arch topper, it reminds me of all the great jazz guitarists. And I grew up playing blues and rock and roll, so there's definitely all those influences. Styles that I love playing.
What's your favorite style there, Joe? What do you enjoy playing the most? Well,
it really changes. I love just playing great songs with a great groove, and that can be, I love playing rock and roll, and I love playing jazz, and I love playing, really great country music in Nashville. Sometimes I get to play with really great country artists. And I love playing, fingerstyle, solo acoustic. I've been listening to a lot of classical music lately, which is something I've never really been that interested in. But for some reason lately, I've been really just listening to all the incredible melodies. So I like all kinds of genres, and anything with a great melody and a great groove and chord sequence has me.
Yeah, that's the thing that's really wonderful, is the fact that you're taking songs from the 20s and 30s, and like you say, there's a thing. A good song is a good song is a good song is a good song, you know, no matter what. And that's another thing we have to talk about as well, because you're a really gifted songwriter and singer as well. Like guitar is just like, of course, your guitar playing is just like so out there and beautiful and perfect to me, and probably to anybody who's a fan. But there's also so much more about you. There was a thing that you had posted, and I'd like to touch on that a bit. You had basically posted one day where you said talent is BS. And I want you to go on about that, because it's really, you have a humbleness about you that's, which is beautiful actually. But can you sort of explain that for our listeners?
Sure. There's a book by Jeff Colvin called Talent is Overrated. And, you know, I've read that book a few times now, and it's really great. It kind of, you know, details like Mozart, his father was a violin technique expert. And, you know, we kind of think of people who are talented and gifted as being born with these unique abilities. And, you know, the thing that really frustrates me is when people think that they don't have talent, and so they give up. And I wanted to just tell my story a little bit in this video, and I wasn't sure how people were going to take it. I really wanted to be honest about my experience and my feelings, and so I spoke about, you know, getting up at 4 a.m. every day to practice, and you know, just being so determined to figure out how to play the instrument like I wanted to play it, and studying all the best people I could, and having really great mentors and encouraging people. And I came up with this idea of focus, flair, and feedback, which, you know, there's many ways to describe what it takes to get good at something, but I thought that was a way of putting it that resonated with my experience. So focus is about doing less. You know, I've just always been one-track mind with music, and that was a deliberate decision, you know, when I was a teenager, because I just knew that this was my ticket out of my small little town, and I knew I could just see how the fingerboard could open up and what I could do with it. And it wasn't easy. You know, so many of the different techniques that I was trying to figure out, you know, just really were frustrating and took a while for me to get my hands around. But the second element is flair, and that's FLAIR, meaning just a little bit of a spark of joy you get from something. And some people would say that's semantics. You're just talking about a natural talent. Well, you know, I think if that's the case, then everybody has talents, and because everybody has something that they have a flair for, and whether it's a flair for storytelling or whether it's a flair for, you know, being interested in gardening or whatever. I mean, everyone has little interests. And then feedback is being around positive influences. And so that can be, you know, in my bedroom when I was a teenager, I had a library of instructional VHS tapes and DVDs. And so the focus, flair, feedback idea was just my way of explaining how I learned to play. And that when people say, oh, he's just talented, I think, you know, don't sell yourself short, because anyone can be great. And, you know, we're not all 7 foot tall basketball players. There are certain physical limitations that we have to work within, but for the most part, I meet so many musical people in life. You can just tell someone has so much musicality. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of explain what my experience was developing my technique on the guitar.
It could be argued in a way that your focus, devotion to your craft, etc., is an innate, born with drive that other people wouldn't have. And this is a two parts thing. The second thing is you talk about focusing just on playing guitar and making that your vehicle to get out. I'm sorry, what's the name? How do you pronounce your town?
Temagog.
It is Temagog. Oh, so it's just as it's spelled. And so, and it's a small town, I heard, very small.
Yeah.
And so, but that was your vehicle to get out of there. And you saw that, like, probably from the first time you picked up your guitar, which is around 10 years old or something, I hear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, to focus is a choice. It's a choice anyone can make. And there's a lot of circumstantial factors that come into play. You know, I grew up in the bush where there was nothing to do. We had a TV, had 2 channels, and they were both fuzzy. And we weren't allowed to watch TV during the week. And it was like, we got hot water in 2001. You know, it was out in the bush.
Wow.
Very, very much like, you know, rustic homestead type way of growing up, you know, and it was great. We lived off the land. We'd, you know, put a cow or a sheep in the freezer and we'd eat off that for a number of months. Like, it was really a great way to grow up. But I grew up just really wanting to do something with myself and to get out and see the world. And I think the conditioning of that childhood, you know, really played into me just having this one-track mind of, okay, music. For a while it was sports, but I just didn't really enjoy sports like I enjoyed music.
What would bring you to be raised in such a remote environment? What was it? Your parents are still together?
Yeah.
And so what brought them there to raise their family?
Well, the story was, my parents met in high school, and my mom went to a bunch of different high schools and moved around a lot, but she met my dad at one of them, and they became, you know, close and dated as teenagers, and then went their separate ways. And, you know, a few years later, my dad was running a banana farm in Coffs Harbour, New South Wales, Australia. And his life was basically lived in this hut with no electricity, and he grew bananas and he surfed every day. That was his life. And he lived on bananas and fish. And my mom,
Wow, that's great.
my mom, she, you know, went to work as like a jillaroo, which is like a cowgirl, you know, working on a ranch. And she kind of was in the veterinary world, working as a veterinary nurse. And she called my dad one day and said, "Oh, I'm in a bad spot. I don't exactly know what was going on," but she said, "Can you help me?" And so my dad said, "Oh, sure." And he went and picked her up, and they had a horse carriage, like a horse float, full of all my mom's animals. I think there was a horse in there and dogs and all kinds of animals. And she drove up to the banana farm, and then they, you know, stayed together and got married. And bought our block of land that I grew up on, which was about 100 acres. And and Dad, you know, is a very resourceful, handy person, and just built our house by hand, basically with a few help of a few friends. But it was just like laid a concrete slab. They lived in a tent for a while they built the house, and I was born, and then my brother was born, and then my other brother was born, then my sister was born, and we just grew up, you know, living off the land. It's kind of like there's a lot of, you know, kind of hippie-ish people up there, and my parents weren't kind of, you know, flower power hippies, but my dad really believed in, you know, cultivating the land. We had fruit trees all around the property, and you know, a lot of people in Australia live that kind of a lifestyle out in the bush, but yeah, people in the cities definitely looked at us like, you know, do you make much money? And we didn't have much money at all, but that wasn't, you know, my parents' priority. And it was definitely unusual, but there's a lot about it that I'm really grateful for. My brothers and sisters and I all have really great, you know, work ethics and doing interesting things and great character. So
Were your parents musical?
yeah.
So your mother and father played instruments as well?
Yeah. My dad played some guitar and some banjo, and my mom played drums in a few bands. So, you know, every other weekend there'd be a band at our house rehearsing. So I grew up around a lot of music, and my mom is a very, very musical person. She plays, you know, a ukulele and mandolin and piano.
What about your siblings?
My siblings all play a little bit of music too. And, you know, when I was growing up, I had bands of kids my age that we would get together and play like the local, any fundraisers for the local soccer club or the karate grading or the rugby club, we'd always be the band that would, play. And my brother and sister kind of saw I was making some money doing that, and they thought, I can start a band. And so my brother and sister, played in a few different bands growing up, but they all play. And my brother Simon is in engineering school studying mechatronic engineering, so kind of electrical engineering mixed with mechanical. And my sister is she's a personal trainer and studying business, and she's just a firecracker. She's 20 and she's managing gyms in Brisbane, Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. At 11 years old, you started touring with like Tommy Emmanuel. Like how does that come to happen at such a young age? And you only started playing guitar a year before.
I was closer to 12. So it was probably 11 and a half. I'd been playing, a year and a half, something like that. And basically, I met Phil Emmanuel, who's Tommy's older brother.
Right.
And I met Phil and Tommy both at a music festival called the Tamworth Country Music Festival. And I met Tommy and shook his hand, and he was very nice. And he said, "You got big hands for a young kid. That's perfect for playing the guitar." And Phil was so generous and so kind. And up until meeting those guys, I was just playing in my little town. And when you're just the kid in your little town playing guitar a lot, no one thinks you're good because no one really knows.
Of course.
And Phil said to me, he said, "Joe, you're one of the best guitarists I've seen for your age." He said, "Most kids your age are listening to some Limp Bizkit crap." He said, "Here you are playing Jerry Reed and Eric Johnson songs." He said, you're just doing great. He said, "If you want to get up on stage with me tonight and play a little bit, we can do that. What song do you want to play?" And I told him, "Oh, I think we played Santana Europa or something." And Phil really took me under his wing, and I was asked to be on a tour with him shortly after, which was kind of like a blues review where I would be featured as the 12-year-old guitar slinging kid, and Phil would get up and we'd play together, and then there'd be an R&B type band with horns and everything. It was really fun. But yeah, I was just hooked on the idea of performing, from the first time I got to do it. So I first started and I learned folk chords and, learned songs from like the Eric Clapton Unplugged songbook. Was toward the end of my experience with my guitar teacher, who's named Jeff Wallage. And from there, I had a few of my parents' friends who played, the style of Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed, and people would turn me on to that style of music, and then some other friends would turn me on to Steve Morse and Joe Satriani and Aldi Meola and Eric Johnson, and I just became exposed to all these great players and music just through my parents' musician friends.
Incredible. Well, another thing that's interesting, I read somewhere that you started playing piano at 6 because they thought your hands were too small to play guitar. So obviously your fingers grew a lot.
Yeah. Well, I always kind of expected to learn a musical instrument in the house. And my mom would get us up in the morning and say, "All right, 30 minutes of piano practice. Joe, you go first." And so I'd be there on the piano doing my scales, and I hated it. I just was not into it. And I took some piano lessons, and this is at age 6, and I got to a point where I was like, "Mom, can I please play the guitar? I want to play the guitar. I just can't stand sitting at this piano every day to practice. I want to take my guitar around with me." And she said, "Okay, you can play the guitar, but if we let you play the guitar, you better practice. Otherwise, you'll be straight back to the piano."
Wow.
So I always wanted to play the guitar instead of the piano.
That's another thing. That make of guitar, I'm ashamed to say. Now, you and Tommy Emmanuel both play those guitars. Where are they made?
They're made in Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, because I've never heard of them before, but they sure seem like a fantastic instrument.
Yeah, they're really great. And
what are they called?
Maton, M-A-T-O-N.
Maton.
In Australia, they are everywhere. They're the ubiquitous guitar in Australia. And they become more and more popular through people like Tommy playing them. And this is my new signature model, which is really I'm very proud of. And it's a great guitar. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Fantastic. So now I gotta go. It's so hard to sort of unpackage all of this stuff because so much happened to you in a fairly short amount of time. Because at 11, so now you're started to do some touring with Phil, right?
Yep.
And then, but what's this? And then you're 13 years old and you won the Australian National Songwriting Championship.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine that at my age. Like, and because now I'm assuming that if you're competing for the Australian National Songwriting Competition, you're competing with all ages.
Well, I think this was like the under 18s section.
Okay. Still fair enough.
But that was a really cool experience. I was playing with some friends of mine in a band. We were called the Chaotic Penguins, and I loved writing songs. And some of the other band members wrote songs too. And we were all kind of, I thought we all had the same amount of skills, and I felt like I was the most passionate one. I was always the one organizing the band practices, but we'd each write songs, and I had this phrase in my song: "I knew a man from Temagog River. His whole body worked except for his liver." Where I come from has a reputation as being kind of these people who have 3-day parties in a shed where they're all jamming to a band and drinking a lot. So it was just kind of a fun little song with a lot of guitar playing. And I won that competition, and it was kind of through the Department of Education, or they were a sponsor, and so the prize was actually like $1,000 worth of equipment for my school. And my music teacher, was like, "Joe, buy yourself an amp and keep it, take it home." He said, "We don't need your money." So it was really great. I got a little Fender tube amp, and I was off.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what was your first guitar? I seem to see some pictures. I think you sent them to me of like a Strat copy.
Yeah, the Strat copy I got pretty early on. My very first guitar was a 3/4 size nylon string guitar. And that was the one I played till the fingerboard was wore off it. I just played that so much, and I really loved that guitar. Unfortunately, it was stolen, and we don't know what happened to it, but the blue electric guitar I got when I was 11 or 12, it was a very cheap guitar, and it just did not sound very good. So some of my parents' friends, Alan Morgan, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was a great local musician. He would loan me a guitar. He'd say, "Here's a Yamaha SG guitar from the 80s. You can play that for a while, and when you get sick of that, I got another guitar for you." And so people would loan me gear, and I was really lucky in that respect.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful community to be raised in. I can see why you're grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at 17 years old, you're on Australia's Got Talent. Now, how does that come about? How did you hear about it? Was it TV ads, or did somebody suggest that you go on it? Or
But what happened was I came to Nashville to meet Tommy Emmanuel when I was 16 or so. And Phil...
Oh, okay, we better backtrack there. Why did that happen?
Well, I was playing a lot of fingerstyle guitar, and I was spending a lot of time with Phil Emmanuel, playing in his band and touring Australia with him. And he said, "Joe, you need to go to Nashville. You need to go to where all the great guitar players are." He said, "I'm going to give you Tommy's number, call him and find a good time and go over there." So this leads into the Australia's Got Talent situation.
And how did you raise the money to go to Nashville?
We borrowed the money from my grandparents, actually. They said, "Here's $10,000. We really believe in Joe, and pay us back when you can, or don't." I actually forget the arrangement, but that was really, really wonderful that they supported me like that. So my mom and I went over, and my mom had never left the country, and we came and we stayed in this really sketchy hotel initially, and we had a few names of people to see in Nashville beside Tommy, because we got there a week or so before we were going to meet Tommy. And so we got a couple of names of people, and they kind of said, "Okay, you can't stay in that part of town. That's a really dangerous area." stay in this hotel. And so we've stayed right down by Music Row, which is where all the publishing studios are. And so I went door knocking on all the buildings on Music Row and said, I'm Joe, I play the guitar, I'm from Australia, can I play you a song? And about half the time they'd say, sure. And half the time they'd say, sorry, we're busy. And so I met all these people in Nashville, and I met Tommy, and Tommy was wonderful and generous with his time and everything. It was great. So I went back to Australia, and Sony Music had contacted me and, heard I was the young gun, kid playing a lot around up and down the East Coast of Australia. And so I took Sony, this list of contacts I'd met in Nashville. And I mean, there's Grammy Award winning producers, and I met the head of Universal in Nashville and the head of Sony, and, all kinds of different, big time music people. And they said, wow, they were like, that's really incredible that you managed to make all those connections. And they said, we got this TV show that we're looking for people to, to really spice things up a little bit. And we think you'd be just great for it. It's called Australia's Got Talent. Do you want to be on it? And my attitude was, I just come back from Nashville where I saw, Brad Paisley's semi-trailer full of guitars. And I was like, I'm going to play any gig someone asked me. I'll play the opening of a Manhole cover. Just give me a gig. I agreed to go on the Australia's Got Talent show. And I went down to Melbourne and filmed, the first episode and got a standing ovation. And it was a amazing energy there. And that translated through the TV, and people, really connected with my story, and they gave me a lot of airtime on the show, which is, that's a big part of, the reason that people remembered me. And Sony said, here's the contract, Joe, for the show. And I said, I'm not interested in a contract. I can't sign that. I'm going to Nashville. I don't want to be in Australia with some, contractual obligations. And I had an attorney who explained to me the contract, and I just refused to sign the contract through the semifinal. And they said, oh, we'll just, we're not going to twist your arm. We'll see what happens. And I just kept refusing to sign it. And I had the head of Sony and the head of Fremantle Media call me and say, Joe, I have 15 programs on the air, and I need you to sign that contract because, otherwise we're going to have to cut you out. And I said, cut me out. I don't want to be on if I have to sign that contract. And so,
wow, that's a ballsy move.
Yeah, it was, I didn't really, realize how big a deal it was being on TV. But it was an amazing thing that I won. I was able to take the prize money and not have to sign the contract. And then I moved to Nashville about a year later. So
that was $250,000 Australian dollars, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was incredible.
So now, once again, so I want to backtrack just a bit when you talk about focus. Now, the thing about focus is that you're focusing on your guitar playing, but I know with me, I have to wear many hats. Now I know how to run my Pro Tools gate rig. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. I know how to edit video. I know how to, so obviously your guitar has led to other things that you have talents for, because you do a great broadcast like weekly, don't you? And plus you teach people online, correct?
Yeah. I try and do a bit of everything. The focus idea, focus to me is about doing less. It's about, not trying to, trying to protect your time in a way. And my way of developing my technique has been to wake up really early before anyone else was awake. So as a teenager, I get up at 4 a.m. and practice, and that's what I love to do. And I'm still kind of in that routine a little bit. I've been getting up at 5:30 a little bit later, but I love to get up early in the morning and practice and just be totally focused on music. And I've always been interested in technology to a degree that it helps me, create music. So I run Pro Tools, and I'm interested in the video side of things a little bit. Someone described it as like a talent stack. Like you have one main thing that you're really good at, and then you can do a little bit of a few things surrounding that, which helps. So I think these days I'm really glad that I have I have a studio at home where I'm set up to record and I can broadcast. And that was just such a great thing once the touring stopped with the pandemic.
Talent stack is a great way to describe it. That's actually, I'm going to use that. That's good. Now, so that's another question. How often do you play guitar? You must have that thing in your hands for hours every day.
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes it's, I try to practice deliberately as much as I can, which is, that's definitely the most effective way to practice. And that's what I preach, when I'm teaching or doing a workshop. I just say it's all about deliberate practice, and that's what it takes to master an instrument. But these days I'm trying to write songs so much. So much of my time is like last night I went to bed and I have a guitar beside the bed and I just sat there and I had a new song and I just spent 45 minutes working on a new song. And then this morning I got up and I'm working on an arrangement for a video I'm going to make next week. So I'm just always, it's kind of like a craftsman mindset where I'm just always, whittling away at a song or an arrangement. And that's kind of how I think about it.
I also saw another thing that you posted one time that I felt was a real Renaissance thing relating to almost a Sammy Cahn as the great lyricist of the 40s back then, or 50s, where you were talking about lyrics and not just settling, and trying to get true rhymes as much as you can. Things that were like, instead of just, rhyming blue with moon is not correct. Blue has to rhyme with something that's ooh,
I've said this before and I'll say it again. Every great thing that's happened to me in my musical journey has been because of a mentor. And I've really learned so much about songwriting. My whole view of how songs are written has changed from spending time with Rodney Crowe. So Rodney Crowe is, they call him the godfather of Americana music. He's just a legendary songwriter here in Nashville. And he's just one of the best, no doubt. And I've learned so much about writing lyrics from working with him. And he very much comes from the school of Dylan and Tom Waits and Leonard Cohen, Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, where, they don't tolerate soft rhymes, hard rhymes. The game of writing with the real craftsmen songwriters like this is they can rewrite a line 20 times before you can blink in order to get the rhyme to be hard. And a hard rhyme just it satisfies on such a deeper level than something that is a soft rhyme. And so Rodney would say good writing is rewriting, and he only keeps 10% of the songs he writes. And so, I've learned all those things from Rodney.
I have a Rodney Crowe story I can share with you. It's actually very close to home here. He had a Gibson guitar. It was not a J45, but it's an old guitar that my friend Dave Reimer he's a great bass player, singer, and he's also a luthier. He builds his own guitars and sells them and all that sort of stuff. He had a friend of ours. Now we all know this guy, Chris Trigg, who lived in Victoria. Dave lives over on the mainland in Vancouver. Chris and Dave were good friends. Dave had a line. Somehow Rodney was selling that Gibson guitar, and Dave bought it. And Chris said, "Oh, I've got to have that guitar. It's got mojo." I mean, he was a huge Rodney Crowe fan, right? Just like, I've got to have that guitar. It's got, it's going to inspire me. So Dave's arranged it. And I actually had the guitar because I lived in Victoria at the time and I was just dating my wife in Victoria. And so I brought it over to him from Vancouver for him so he would have that guitar. Anyway, sadly, Chris died of cancer a little while later, and now it's gone back to Dave. So Dave has that Gibson guitar, and it was Rodney's guitar. There's actually videos of him playing that thing. And apparently, if the story, maybe you know this, I don't know. There's a story of that he dug that guitar out of like a flower pot or something, or somebody. It was this guitar that somebody had let go to waste, and he actually took it and made it sing again. I don't know if you know anything about that story, but.
I don't, but I'll ask him about it. I mean, it doesn't surprise me he dug it out of a flower pot or something.
Yeah. So that guitar, one of my best friends has his guitar now, which is really, talk about 6 degrees of separation, huh?
I wonder, is it a 00 Gibson type? guitar?
I'll tell you what. I'll get a picture of it and I'll send it to you via email so you can see it.
That'd be great. There's a crazy story about Rodney. He had Johnny Cash's Martin that Johnny gave him, and he was flying to Hawaii with Roseanne Cash, who was his wife at the time, and he checked it in at the sidewalk and never saw it again. Someone stole it, and it was like a herringbone 1940 set, it would be worth $80,000 or something now.
Yeah. That I was ashamed that I only knew about you in October, because last year we were going by and saw this billboard, my wife and I saw Tommy Emmanuel was coming to Victoria. And I went, I've got to go see that guy. Now for years, probably about 3 years, I always thought he was American for some reason. I didn't realize he was Australian until one day I heard him talk about, wow, because he's a gifted player. And so I said, we've got to go see him. Well, then I find out, after I found out about you, that you were on that tour with him that ended up being canceled because of COVID, but you were supposed to play up here.
Yeah, I still have my flight credits. We had, probably 6 or 8 Canadian shows booked where, I opened for Tommy and play a 35, 40-minute set, and then he'll do his show and we'll play together at the end. It's just a blast whenever I get to be around Tommy. He's got so much energy and he's so inspiring, and talk about having a guitar in your hand all day. He's always practicing. He's really the benchmark of a committed musician to me. So I'm really looking forward to when we can come back and play there.
So you guys are like kindred spirits, obviously.
Yeah. When I first heard him play and just felt the power of his guitar coming through the PA system, I just was like, okay, this is a game changer. I got to figure out how to do that. I've never heard anyone do that. And I've been listening to all these great guys on VHS tapes.
Right.
I knew there was something special about him. And of course, over especially the last 15 years, I would say, he's really taken the world by storm. And we've played together in some incredible places. We toured in Europe together. And I always love this story of, we played this concert hall in Germany, and it was 2,000 people or so. It was a big room, and he just gave it all the energy he could. And anyone who's seen him will see him do a drum solo on the guitar and just, pull out all the stops. And he did the Elvis getaway where he got straight in the Sprinter van back to the hotel, before the applause finished, basically. Right. And I stayed and packed up my equipment and everything, and I went back to the hotel, and I'm coming up the elevator, and I'm staying on the same floor as him, and I hear his metronome.
Wow.
Clicking away, and he's in there practicing after a gig to that many people, at midnight, after midnight. So, he's just inspired me ever since I first heard him, and he continues to do so. And I have some shows tentatively scheduled later in the year with him, kind of throughout the Northeast, and I think a few of the rescheduled Canadian dates. So I'm really looking forward to when that happens.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to see you guys. Do you practice with a metronome a lot?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's a lost art, because I find myself getting bored with any sort of click track. So I have a tendency I'll practice to a drum loop.
Yeah.
Something that just, when I do practice, I'm really sorry that I'm one of those guys you'd like to slap.
Well, we all go through phases, and for me, this time of being at home is, I've really been able to practice like I haven't in quite a while. And practicing with a metronome, especially when playing fingerstyle guitar, that's really a big part of the challenge, is trying to get all the notes to groove right, and to be able to just not speed up and not slow down, and play with a good pocket and feel. And
well, you certainly have all of that. Now, can I talk about Lenny Breau a bit? Because one of the Lenny Breau, even though he was from, I believe, northern United States, he moved to Winnipeg, Canada. And so Canada sort of thinks that Lenny Breau is, Canadian. Right. He isn't really, but you do those harmonics that the first time I ever heard of them was from Lenny Breau, but you're so much more fluid. I mean,
Lenny was incredible.
Yeah, can you throw some of those at us?
Sure.
Yeah. So I got a guitar here too. So like you're doing a 12th fret thing, right? So your harmonic here.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to plug mine in just because I don't think connection is all that good. Here we go. Can you hear this?
Yep.
So, because are you doing this sort of thing where you're going, you're plucking and hitting a harmonic, and then your second finger is hitting the third string, correct?
Exactly.
Like that?
Yep.
But you're following. So if this note is here and this finger's like 4 frets away, you're going. Oh, that's the hard thing that you're at for me. Sorry, I'm in a bad position. So I got to grab it here, right?
Exactly.
And you're just so fluid at it, but like you say, it's practice.
Oh yeah, that was a technique that I used to perform with a young guitarist named Brian Brown when I was a teenager, and I was 17 and he was 15, and he could play that technique so perfectly, and I was always jealous. So eventually I figured it out. But yeah, I think it's easier with a thumb pick. I think it's hard to get the articulation without a thumb pick.
Okay.
But I just use a thumb pick, and sometimes I'll go 6th string, 3rd string, 5th string, 2nd string. So there'll be a 4-string gap, and then sometimes it'll be 3rd string, 6th string. 4th string, 6th string, 3rd string, 5th string. So it'll be like a 3-string gap. So there's a couple little patterns, and really it's just kind of a nice little embellishment to do. And there's certain chords that work really well, like a D minor 9, like that. And yeah, Lenny really, was such an incredible player on a 7-string and on a 9-string.
Yeah. He was from another world because he sort of invented a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, he came from a country background too. He was like a Chet. I remember hearing a story where he finally got to sit with Chet Atkins years later. And so Chet Atkins says, "Okay, let's see what you do." And he said, "Like, what do you do?" He says, "Well, I play some of your stuff." And he said, "Okay, well, play me one of my songs then." So he played the song, and Chet goes, "Do that again." He played it. He goes, "How'd you do that?" And Lenny says, "I just listened to your record." He says, "Yeah, but I was double tracking it." he didn't know about double tracking, so he learned how to play both parts at once.
Yeah.
He was like one of those guys, right? But you're doing that kind of stuff now. That's the thing, is that there's a rung that happens, and the next guy comes along, and now you're probably 10 rungs up from those days when people didn't know anything about that kind of technique.
I don't know. I think Lenny was a really special player, and I don't think there's been anybody quite like him. And that story reminds me of when Tommy Emmanuel heard "Windy and Warm" on the radio, and Chet played it with a capo on the 3rd fret, and Tommy didn't know what a capo was, so he figured out how to play it. Kind of with the bar chord like that, where Chet played it.
Right, which is substantially easier.
Much easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, these days, I mean, I was just thinking recently, it's amazing how much more content there is on YouTube about how to do just about anything.
Yes.
Compared to 10 years ago. If I want to, play a melodic minor scale over different chords, and I can watch 20 different videos of, some incredible musician in Brazil, and then some incredible musician in London. And I mean, there's people all over the world putting up, instructional information on YouTube. So this is the age of being an autodidact on those things. It's incredible.
Hey, Joe, quick question. So, I mean, obviously your technical skill has surpassed a lot of professional musicians and all, but where would you like to take your technical capabilities? Are there areas that you haven't gone into yet? There's things you want to try and focus on enhancing?
Yeah, I think, I'm really interested in just continuing to hone my sound and my style and my repertoire, and I want to give the world great songs and great recordings. So it's I think my technique has gotten to a place where I'm always trying to get better and trying to get better time and better tone and better touch. But in terms of playing faster or trying to play like some percussion at the same time as what I do, or expanding any of that. For me, it's more about trying to communicate something with the audience. So I guess my practicing now has less focus on technique beyond maintaining technique and having fun playing. And I want to get better at playing jazz. I feel like that's a world we can explore, and it's just like a bottomless pool of information. There's a whole bunch of players that really inspire me.
Who would you like to be playing with? That's on your list. Who's on your wish list?
Oh, well, there's a lot of heroes, from great drummers like Steve Gadd. I'd love to work with Steve Gadd. I'd love to do a guitar duet with Jeff Beck. I'd love to play. He played electric. That'd be pretty high up there. I'd love to jam with Stevie Wonder. That'd be pretty incredible. There's no shortage of wishes.
You met Stevie Wonder. We have a picture of that. Where was that from?
That was in Nashville. And my friend who's also in that picture with me, Blue Miller, who passed away a couple years ago now, he was a great friend and mentor. And Blue wrote a lot of India Ari's songs with her when she was first signed. And Blue took me to the show. And when we went backstage and chatted with Stevie for a while, and Stevie said, when he heard Blue's music, he said, "You're not white and you ain't black." He said, "You're blue."
That's great. Stevie, he's another one. He's a pioneer on every level, just one of those guys. Every singer that's come along in the past 25 years owes their existence to Stevie Wonder. All those incredible licks that people are able to do now, he started it all.
Yeah, Stevie Wonder, and before him, Ray Charles.
Yeah.
That music to me just oozes joy.
Yes.
And I created this course a few years ago called Joe's 12, where I interviewed a lot of my mentors. I interviewed Kev Moe and Eric Johnson and Tommy, and the thing that really stuck out as being something I didn't realize is how consciously a lot of these people think about bringing joy to people. I think a lot about that. And when I do the live streams, I think, these poor people in England can't leave their house, and there's curfews, in Canada, and I think music is just a really important thing in human connection. And even if it's online, when I'm sitting there playing for a camera, or I'm watching a stream of someone else, it feels like they're right there. And I think just bringing the joy is something that my favorite music does that for me, including Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles and all the greats. But that's what I try to think about.
Well, it's interesting because I'm talking to you now, and there's very little difference from me talking to you and watching your Live from Home series, because you're sitting in the same position. The last thing I saw, you're sitting with that same microphone, and everything's in the same position. And I'm going, this is amazing. It's like I've dropped in on one of your Live from Home sessions. That's all that's going on. You open up one of your songs with a thing it's harmonics on the here, and what are you doing there?
Yeah. Etc. So all that is harmonics on the 7th fret and 12th fret, and I'm using the first finger to play the D and G strings on the 7th fret.
Okay.
And then pinky to play the B and E strings on the 12th fret.
Right. So here.
Exactly. And then I'm going thumb, first finger, thumb, second finger. Yeah.
I could use a metronome. See, I'm looking at your hands, your fingers. Just look at the difference on the spread of your fingers and the spread of mine. It's everything I can do to get to that position. You could probably I think you could go 7 frets with your stretch.
Not quite.
It's unbelievable.
My left hand's bigger than my right hand, actually, from playing.
Oh yeah, well, from my years of playing bass, I've got this going on. See, when I stretch my hand, my left finger, this baby finger, goes way further. Yeah. Your original music, and you've got a wonderful voice. That's the thing. You're a really good singer too. Like I really think like that's the thing you're talking about, and you're talking about bringing joy to people. I mean, it that comes through on your Live from Home series so much. The whole time it's like you're watching, and it just seems like your happiness that you're giving out, you're getting back, and there's this reciprocal thing that's going on the entire time you're performing.
Exactly. You know, whenever I play a show with Rodney or Tommy Emmanuel, and you know, we play a lot of theaters, and I'm always hustling at the merch table after the show. So as the last song finishes, I'm rushing to get to the lobby to be there ready to sign CDs and sell CDs.
Right.
And I love that energy of everyone just walking out going like, oh my goodness, that was an incredible show. Everyone's smiling, everyone's happy, and everyone has this energy. I mean, that's just a really important part of what I'm always going for when I'm playing, is just trying to make people feel like they saw something special. And for that reason, I'm always trying to be a little bit on the edge of whatever I'm doing, whether it's trying a new song or, they say that's what makes a performer interesting to watch, is if they could fall and crash and burn at any moment.
That's the wonderful thing about live.
Yeah. It's raw and honest.
You're so unaffected and stable. Like, do you attribute that to coming from where you came from? Like, you just seem like a very centered, down to earth, like you have your blinders on where you want to go. You're wonderful, but you're a wonderful person that you seem to get along with everybody. I mean, you talk freely. I find it that you seem unaffected by all that's happened to you. I know you're not even 30 yet.
Yeah, I'm turning 30 in May. Well, I think it's partly it's temperamental. You know, my dad's really, as laid back as you can get. And I've always just loved music so much and wanted to be great. And I get really frustrated and beat myself up when I feel like I'm not fulfilling my potential like anybody. And I get, anxious and frustrated with it. But I really, it's an interesting experience, kind of dedicating your life to music, because if you don't practice and if you don't play from a pure place, then you can feel it and you can tell. And
you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, my life really changed a few years ago when I started reading more, and especially old books, philosophy and psychology, and just really interesting people like Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and people who had ideas way bigger than themselves. And through my mid-20s, which I think for a young man is often a time of searching, I kind of lost this sense of who I was and what I was about for a while. But lately, I feel like I've really found that, and music has brought that back to me, and I feel centered and really grateful, and I feel like I've worked through a lot of things psychologically.
You don't seem like the type of guy who has a lot of vices.
No, I remember being 11, 12 years old and seeing people snorting cocaine and going on 3-day benders. And, I had musicians who I was kind of, I was calling them saying, hey, how do you play this scale? Or how do you do this? Or what is the record I should listen to? I've already listened to all these records you told me about. And I knew not to call them on a Monday or Tuesday because they were, recovering from their alcoholism of a 5-day drinking bender. So I grew up around a lot of that. And my mom always said to me, Joe, people think I'm crazy for letting you play in a band with someone on methadone. like Stevie Wright. I played with Stevie Wright when I was a teenager from the Easy Beats, a legend in Australia.
Yeah.
I remember he came to stay at our house, and he had, this this bag of pills across my desk where I do my homework, and he slept in my bed, and I was like, what's this going? And we're at the breakfast table in the morning, and he's just passed out. I mean, saw a lot of crazy things. And for that reason, my mom always said to me, now that you've seen the ugly side of rock and roll, you're not going to want to participate in it. And that was true. I mean, I had a lot of friends who grew up in more conservative households, and they weren't exposed to any of that. And so they couldn't wait to go out and smoke pot and get drunk. But, for me, it was like, I saw how ugly that could be. So I wasn't, I just try and build good habits. And some people would say I'm a nerd. I keep a practice journal, and I see my job is
you keep a practice journal. Let's go into that. So what's in that journal? Like a daily thing that this is what you're going to do on Tuesday, this is what you're going to do on Wednesday type of thing?
Yeah, kind of. It's always evolving, but right now it's, I put the time I wake up, I track my heart rate variability, which is a good indicator of how far you can push yourself or how tired you are.
Well, wait. Let's go back a bit. You check your heart rate?
Yeah, heart rate variability. So I strap on a Bluetooth monitor in the morning, and I track my heart rate variability. It's something a lot of athletes, triathletes will do. And basically, if my heart rate variability is low, meaning the recovery of the heart rate is not super quick, then that means I'm tired and I need more rest, and I ought to take it easy. But if it's high, which it usually is if I get enough sleep and eat pretty well, then I know I'm going to play my best. I know it's a good day to record. It's a good day to stream. And that's just one thing that I do.
That's incredible. That is all incredible. So, okay. So what's your dietary thing? Are you, like some people are vegan? We just talked to a guy who's a strict vegan. I mean,
well,
what's your,
I pretty much eat, nothing from I eat whole foods. So I don't eat anything from any processed food pretty much. So I eat vegetables and not a lot of fruit. It's pretty low carbohydrate way of eating. And I eat meat, and I buy everything from local farms here. So I'm really a localist style of, that's my.
Are you a dairy guy?
Yeah, I eat dairy. I make my own yogurt. I put the culture in, and my favorite way to do it is with raw milk, which is controversial, but I have a raw milk dealer here in Nashville, and I culture my own yogurt. And I try to eat, within a 6 or 8 hour window, and then I fast the rest of the day. So it's intermittent fasting, which has become a popular thing these days.
Right.
But yeah, I eat, eggs and a lot of red meat, a lot of lamb and beef.
What time is your live at home show taped Nashville time?
It's 6 p.m. That's
6 p.m. And so,
so
by that time you finished your you finished your eating for the day?
Yeah. I usually have dinner around 4. I'm sorry, around, I was going to say 1400. I'm thinking in 24 hours. Around between 2 and 3, I have dinner, and I have a breakfast around 9 usually. So, yeah. So really a 6 hour window. That's what you eat in. Interesting. Yeah. So you really do treat yourself as like an athlete. Yeah. I mean, I forget who told me that, but if you want to play music on the highest level, I think that's important. I mean, when I meet people who are like, on drugs or like eating tons of sugar or drinking a lot, I'm just amazed that they can function, because whenever I do that, I think I have a sensitive system or something, because if I eat sugar or drink beer or anything, I just feel like crap. So
I have to say, I mean, your dedication to your craft is your entire life, is all aspects of your life. But it shows. I mean, if people, as you alluded to earlier in the show, everybody's good at something. If they give themselves an opportunity to do their best at what they're best at, but they dedicate themselves to that. There's really no stopping you. And you're a great example. I think you're the only guest we've ever had on this show that's had this level of dedication, but across your life. But doing it in a way that's not burning yourself out. This is just what you enjoy to do. And you've decided to mold your life around supporting that. And I think that's a very amazing example. We call it a lesson from the trench. Like, what are the things you can't learn in a book or watching a video that really only comes from mentoring? Like, this is the kind of stuff you learn from mentoring. And did you pick up a lot of this stuff from some of your mentors? Or is this just something you've decided you want to do that works well for you?
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of creative people, have good lifestyle habits, but a lot of them don't. I mean, I learned from a lot of people, okay, don't do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be
Keith Richards comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be that guy who's had 5 wives and I don't want to be that guy who's, addicted to this or that, or, has emphysema because he's been smoking cigarettes all that time. But yeah, I mean, for me, it makes me think of quotes like "the unexamined life is not worth living" from Socrates, or, there's this idea that meaning in life is found from being in the area of proximal development. And I've always felt, and I say this to people in guitar masterclasses and whatnot, you're just always trying to be on the edge of your abilities. And so you're always just trying to push the envelope a little bit. And I'm always trying to refine my habits, because people say, oh, you're so disciplined, you're so rigid. And I'm like, actually, I feel like, I spend half the day daydreaming, and I go for a walk and I see a fretboard, and I just, it's to live a very creative life. And my fiance is an illustrator, and she's a very creative life too, and she's, I learn a lot from her. She's got it dialed in, but it's just this idea that habits, once you have a habit, it's just, you just do that. It doesn't require much discipline. So I've just found out what works for me with regard to food. And honestly, I had some health problems, like autoimmune things. Like, I'd be on tour in England and I'd have iritis in my right eye, and my eye would go blood red, and I'd have to, it would be excruciatingly painful for 6 weeks, and I'd have to take steroid drops. So I found that, I cut out a lot of sugar and whatnot, and that went away. So yeah, I've just figured out.
Can I ask you a question, Joe?
Of course.
So there's another piece to this. I love you talking about the book "Talent is Overrated," and you were saying, pretty much we all have it. It's just practice. And I don't know if you've read the book "Outliers" by Malcolm Gladwell, because he had the same proposal that basically the Beatles were as good as they were because they got extra time to practice in Germany. Yeah. And Bill Gates got to be as good as he did because his mother rented him terminal time at the university. And I think you got a lot of incredible upbringing from your parents, modeling healthy behavior and truly supporting you. And I so admire and love your healthy lifestyle and what you're doing. But there's a drive, there's a spark in you that I hope you see is fairly unique. Like, for you to get up at 4 a.m., there ain't many teenagers on the planet that are willing to, or driven to, get up that early and work on their craft. Where do you suppose that comes from? Where is that spark that drives you?
Well, honestly, I think it comes from a lot of discontent of when I was younger. I really had this feeling of like, people at school would say, oh, Joe lives up there in the bush in a cardboard box. I would get ribbed so much in high school and in elementary school. Like, I was always the youngest kid. I was always the kid with the, my mom would always iron my shirt and make sure I went to school, looking all right. But it was always like hand-me-downs. It was like we were poor, and it wasn't always a pretty picture at home, although, in aggregate, it was really wonderful. And my parents spent a lot of time with us, which I think is important. I'm really grateful for that.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of that drive comes from and it's also, I have no backup plan. I left school when I was 15. So this is my whole world. And a lot of it is you got to I visualize what I want to do and what I want to be, and I really tie my identity up in that. And so that's a big element of it, I think. That there's no backup plan, and I love Outliers, and Outliers really emphasizes how important the environment is, and I really agree with that so much, because there are kids that grow up without a stable household, without nourishing food, and that's just really, really tough. So I had a great environment, but there was enough discomfort, and I mean, from a young age, it was like, okay, Joe, it's breakfast time. Go out and split the wood. Okay,
Gotcha.
Simon, you're going to light the fire. Joe, you're going to split the wood. I'll wheel in the firewood, and then go get the eggs from the chickens. Okay, you lift the chickens up and get the eggs out, and it was just this kind of farm way of living that conditions you to realize the work needed to do something. So those things had a lot to do with it, but I just remember feeling like I got to get out of the bush. I got to get out of here, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I had people in my extended family who said, "Oh, there's so many people who want to play music. Like, Joe's never going to make it. Like, he needs to just, be a mechanic or something." And I was really determined to prove people wrong. So,
and what do they say now? These friends here.
Well, it's funny because once I won that TV show, everyone thought I was this, local celebrity. And I was honestly shocked. I was like, you mean I was this kid playing and, just begging the publican to let me play inside of a bar? I was under 18. I'd have to play with my cord cable through the window. And people would look at me like, what are you doing around here, kid? Just playing guitar all the time.
Did you have the experience? I think a lot of people have had this experience where they're actually denying that, it's like, oh, give it up. And then when you actually make something of yourself, they're the first ones to go, see, I always knew you could do it. It's like they about face like crazy. You talked about, one thing is that I think the way to say it is your plan B was go back to plan A, because that's all you had. Yeah. And me too. I mean, I don't even have my grade 10. It was always, I was going to be a musician. I knew that right from the time I was 7.
Yeah, absolutely. You know it. And the thing about learning an instrument, it's the same about, learning to play chess or learning to play a sport at a high level. Once you know how to learn something, you can apply that to a lot of other things. So if I couldn't play one day for whatever reason, I would find something else to channel all my energy into, and I wouldn't have the hours that I have on the guitar to lean on, but I would figure something else out. I know that. So
Walter Trout was just on our show, and I love Walter. I think in an email I mentioned that I'd done the jazz festival with him, and we became really good friends. But his story, now you talk about somebody who, to the point of, he finally gave up drinking because he got, I guess Carlos Santana came up to him in a bar one day and said, "What are you doing with this gift?" And he basically said, with what you're doing with your gift, you're looking up above and going like this to the man,
Yeah.
And he said, "This is a book," and he gave him a book. It was like, he said it was
It was Robert Schuller's book.
Robert Schuller book. And he said, of course, Robert Schuller has a lot of philosophical things, not just biblical sort of quotes. And he said, "Read this book and come and talk to me." And he did that. And so he swore off alcohol, but lo and behold, I mean, it was like quite a few years later, I think about 13 years later, where he ended up with sclerosis of the liver, even though he had quit doing all the bad things he was doing. And he ended up having a liver transplant. You talked about watching him play, and he puts on a hell of a show. There's a guy that's glad for each minute he's alive right now.
Yeah, it was really inspiring being around him because, on stage, he's loud and he's high energy and just, the passion just oozes from him. And you think, okay, I wonder if he's a nice guy off stage. He could not have been friendlier. We played together at a festival in Colorado. It was a couple years ago now. And yeah, man, really you can tell that he's great. He was so grateful to be there. I mean, a lot of people will complain. They'll be like, "Oh, this place is 10,000 feet altitude, and the air's dry, and we've got to walk all the way from this cabin where we're staying in to the stage, and you got to hone your guitar." He was so grateful, so nice. My mom was actually with me at that festival, and we got chatting with him, and he reminded me of a lot of people I grew up with in Australia, because there's a lot of just weathered souls who've done it all and seen it all, and not everyone comes out the other side, but it's inspiring to me that he was such a nice man.
Your mom is an important figure in your life. Your dad as well, but it seems like your mom has been there for a lot of your pivotal points of your life.
Yeah, my parents' arrangement early on was Dad will do all the sport things with us, and my mom will do all the music things.
Oh, okay.
And so, because my mom is, she's the social person. She loves being around people, and she loved being at gigs. And my dad, is he loves being on the land, and he's more of a homebody. And he was the coach of our soccer team at one point when I was a kid. So he was really involved, and my dad is just a rock solid person in the lives of everyone in my family. But my mom, really, we spent a lot of time, having cars break down on the side of the highway in Australia, and her sitting there while I was busking for hours. And I mean, she really went.
So literally, you'd raise money to fix your car.
Well, pretty much. It's funny because I remember my first car I got before I had a license, and I was paid for doing a gig with that car. It was a 1985 Mercedes 230 TE. Actually used to belong to Phil Emanuel, and
wow,
promoter for this gig sold it to Phil, and then I guess Phil sold it back to him, and he was like, "Joe, you need a good car. Here's a car for you. Your mom and you can drive around this, and you got to play at this party, with this band for me." And I was like, "Oh, sure, okay." So we drove that car, and then it broke down on the road at one point, and Mercedes are expensive to fix, so
yes,
that car got us through a while. And I remember going to this music festival in Tamworth, actually, and I was probably 15 or 16, and my mum and I were driving along. We had a 1975 Toyota Land Cruiser troop carrier,
right?
And we broke down and had to sleep in the back, and I think Dad came. It was probably a 3-hour drive. I think he came and fixed it, but yeah, all those kind of things.
My best friend, this is just on a side note, my best friend actually played with Jimmy Barnes for 10 years over in Australia. Yeah, and Barnes is another one of those people that he's relatively unheard of in North America, and yet probably one of the greatest rock singers of all time.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you asked who's the iconic band in Australia, and people will think it's AC/DC, but it's
Cold Chisel.
Chisel, yeah.
Yeah, Cold Chisel's the band. Yeah, everybody loves that band, and Barnes, he's the guy. Yeah, Jeff co-wrote a few albums with him over this 10 years. But Jeff now plays in one of Canada's biggest bands. They're called Street Heart. Once again, a band that's never made it outside of Canada. But you're engaged. So how'd you meet her? And what's it like for a girl like that with a guy who's so dedicated that he gets up at 5:30 in the morning to practice? You moved it an hour and a half for her, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. She's Canadian, actually. She's in Quebec.
Oh.
And we met at the big music festival in Quebec, Festival d'Été, which is the Quebec City Summer Festival. I'm sure you know.
I've actually never played that one. I played the jazz festival there, but
right.
The Montreal Jazz Festival, pardon me.
Yeah. I was booked on this one year. Actually, Lucas Nelson, Willie Nelson's boy.
Yeah, I've toured with Lucas. He's a great guy.
He was supposed to do the gig, but he canceled for some reason. And so my booking agent, I was with the same booking agency, and they said, "Okay, Joe, you want to do this gig?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I flew up there with my trio, and I met her, and she was 19 at the time, and I was 24 or 23, and she was the art director for the festival. So it's a big festival. It was the biggest stage in North America, and that year, and she's doing all the artwork and everything for us. So she's really brilliant, and I met her there, and she gave me her business card, and she's an artist. She does portraits that look lifelike, and is really incredible. And so we just kept in touch and became, good friends online. And then she came down to Nashville and did an album cover, did the artwork for an album cover with me. And
Who made the first move?
well, I guess she did, because she was like, I want to come to Nashville, and she kind of, I was originally thinking, oh, this girl, she's only 19 or 20, I'd gotta be careful. But we became really close, and eventually I went up there, and we started dating, and because she works from home, works remotely, she could come on tour with me and keep work going on the road. And so we've been together now for 5 years or so, and we're engaged. And because the border's closed to the Canada and the US, it's difficult for me to go up and see her because she's still there. But we have a visa for her to move to the US that was just, the first part of it was approved. So we're hopefully in the next few months she'll be able to come down here.
And like you say, her work goes with her. So it's not like her work is going to fall apart. She'll be able to take it with her, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And her father, is around a lot of music. He has a recording studio. And so she knows, she's been in the music world enough to know, what that life is like, but that's not what she does for a living, which I think is, I think I would find it difficult to be in a relationship with like a senior, for example, although that works for a lot of people. But yeah, it's a really nice rapport, and she really supports me, and she's way more disciplined and strict.
Your hat, I rarely see you without it. Tell me about your hat.
Yeah, this is it's got a kangaroo on it.
Yes.
I used to wear a wide brimmed hat, but people kept saying I looked Amish, or they mentioned that. So I started wearing my kangaroo hat, and it stuck. People like it. People ask me they want to buy one.
Yeah, where did you get it from? Is there a special meaning to it, or?
Yeah, the hat company is actually from Australia, and they make hats with all kinds of different images on it. But it's actually kind of nice on the Facebook Live, because they see what's that hat, and they say, oh, it's a kangaroo, and then they listen to me and they're like, oh, he's from Australia. Oh, that's
yeah, I know. It's your homage to home, between the kangaroo and your guitar. And
yeah.
Speaking of home, and being that you're in Nashville and that, have you ever had a chance to hook up with Keith Urban, a fellow Oz, and do any work with him?
Yeah, we haven't worked together. We've met a handful of times around town, and he's a great guy and has a reputation around town as just being a really, really nice person.
Yeah. And he was obviously a judge on America's Got Talent too.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, my friend I was talking about, who worked with Jimmy Barnes, he was talking about, I guess before Keith Urban really broke big time over here, he was already big in Australia. And so I guess Jeff and Jimmy Barnes and Keith Urban were working on a song at Jimmy Barnes' house one day. They were doing a songwriting thing. And he said he's never seen so much service from all the females in the house. Oh, can we get you cookies? Oh, can we get you this? Oh, can we get you that? Because they all wanted to come down and see Keith Urban, right?
I talked to some people who were working on, I forget which film. It was an Australian-oriented film with Nicole Kidman in it. And they said they were on set, and it was Nicole's birthday or something, and they said, oh, this guy came and he sang pretty good, and he just played like a full set for 30 minutes or something, and it was actually Keith, and they didn't even know it was him.
Yeah, he's certainly gone on to great things, and they seem like a really good couple, those two. They really do. They seem like they really have a kindred spirit somehow. They're really supportive of each other.
Yeah, and Keith's inspired so many Aussies to come over here. I mean, he's just done so well, and I mean, he's a great player and songwriter, and he was mentored by Tommy, and they're very close. And
yeah, the first band of note that I picked up on, like there was singers from Australia, but the first band of note was the Little River Band. Yeah. That was the band that sort of made a big foray. That was pre-AC/DC, and ironically, I remember, or not ironically, but more incidentally, I was taught May Pang, who I don't know if you know much about John Lennon, but May Pang spent time with John Lennon, and apparently Reminiscing by the Little River Band was his favorite song in years up before he died. And he loved that song, and he was so happy that an Australian band had finally made it in North America, because he loved Australia.
That's really cool. I didn't know John liked Australia that much. That's very cool.
Yeah, he thought it was just great that this Australian band had come, and of course the harmonies in that song, they were a fantastic band.
They had great songs, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just before we let you go, when does your record drop?
Well, I'm not sure yet. We still have to figure out the plan for the release, but people can find out more about me, on my YouTube channel. Just search Joe Robinson, and on Facebook, and I go live each week. And I also have some educational materials with TrueFire for any guitar players out there. And my course, joes12.com, is also somewhere that they can go and check that out.
We'll supply all those links to this under this interview. All the links will be there. So
brilliant.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. That was really special.
Thanks for joining us. Check out our many other episodes and vignettes for more great content. And please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGPresents.com to access all our content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.